My jaw dropped practically off my face. I couldn't believe what he just said. Well, it isn't rocket science, in such a snarky tone. My internal rebuttal? Well, I wouldn't be asking if I knew how to do it. Why did he have to be so insulting? You see, I have spirally curly hair, and I've never been able to straighten it on my own. That is, and have it stay without frizzing. His point, though he didn't have to be a jerk about it, was there's a formula to it. And just like in business, there are certain formulas you can follow, but building your business isn't as predictable as something that's procedure, like a hairstyle, which, by the way, I finally figured out, no thanks to him. So what do we do when we're trying to figure out our own path forward? When we're putting the puzzles together of our career, our skill growth, our business growth, into that magical game plan, that roadmap that moves us forward? Well, stay tuned for the answer to this burning question. Welcome to Your Formula for Success series, where I'm sharing that success can look very different from what's traditionally done or expected, where you can gain an advantage from proven formulas and lessons learned without being stifled in your own creativity as you carve your own path to greatness. I hope to make you stop and say, wait a minute, I don't have to do life or business this way anymore. I have the power to change, to rethink the next phase, to move around the obstacles and do things my way. This series will challenge your thinking in a good way to get you moving forward in the right direction. This started out early in my fledgling career, before I started my first company. I was searching for the career trajectory to be the CEO. And so what I did is I went out on this little research project. I was looking for the formula, so I needed to ask CEOs. So I called some up and I got meetings with them. Now imagine this 22-year-old, maybe I was 23, going around asking CEOs if I could interview them about how they got to where they were. I'm guessing they were just flattered because they all said yes. It was really cool until it wasn't. You see, no matter how many CEOs I interviewed, none of their formulas, none of their career paths were the same. I thought, since I know how to go to a university and get degrees, I could apply the same idea to becoming a CEO. I was looking for what are the next moves in my own career so that I can be on the right path. So how did this all get started? How did I get interested in being a CEO? Well, it's kind of a pretty cool story. It was the times of the dot-com boom and bust. We were in a boom time at this point, and I saw that my company, the company I worked at, was being bought. And then we got bought and new people came in. And then we were sold again. And then we were split apart and mushed together with this other company, actually several parts of another company. I didn't know it at the time, but we were purchased by a private equity venture fund, and they had purchased 5 other businesses so they could make this super conglomerate of a company, which is why we were merged together with other pieces. But then we were split off again and sold again. This happened about 5 times while I was there. We were 5 different company names, and I was fascinated. Here I was, a technical person, a techie, a programmer, a sysadmin, whatever, all the hats, right? Because back then we were all the hats. And I wanted nothing more than to be in the room where the decisions were getting made about this company. How do you decide who to sell to? I had heard through the grapevine that we had multiple bidders and one was picked. Why was that? How did they know which one to pick? What were the criteria? What were the discussions on the decisions? I also wanted to be in the room deciding how to break the company up into different pieces and squish it together with other ones. That fascinated me. I tried to get in that room. I asked, can I be a fly on the wall? Can I do something to help with this? Little did I know, little naive me, that those conversations are sensitive and not just anyone gets to go in. But I so desperately wanted to understand the decision-making process because I wanted to do it for myself. You see, I was in my MBA program by this point, and I remember the story of Chainsaw Al. Now, Chainsaw Al doesn't seem like your typical role model with a name like Chainsaw Al, but he had a fascinating job because he was in charge of going into a failing part of a business and turning it around. He was a turnaround king, but he had the reputation of making hard decisions to shut factories down. And I thought, that must be fascinating work. How do you make a decision like that? It's a huge decision affecting so many people, the whole community. I wasn't so much interested in the chainsaw part as I was about being able to make informed decisions. And most importantly, to turn a company around from failing to thriving. That was fascinating. And I thought, well, if I want to do that, I should get in the room with all of these merger and acquisition discussions. That would be amazing. And I was told no, which really sucked. I was also told no when I walked into my VP's office. I said, hey, I'm looking for my next career move, and I want to understand, how do you get your job? He looked at me rather condescendingly and said, well, first, you have to be a program manager for at least 6 years before you can even think of getting the job that your boss has. And I'm 3 bosses above your boss. So that's going to take a really long time. First of all, I had no interest in becoming a program manager, let alone for 6 years. Are you kidding me? I'm on the fast track, buddy. And I was very fast. My aptitude for learning new things and applying what I'm learning was phenomenal. And I get to toot my own horn for that because that's something I'm really proud of. And he was telling me not only would I have to do that job for 6 years, but then I would also have to take, all of my lifetime to maybe reach where he was? Did he not know me very well? Well, actually, no, he didn't know me very well. But I didn't like that answer whatsoever, which is why I went on to interview the CEOs to figure it out, because they were younger than him. And I didn't like his answer. Well, I loved the answers of the CEOs. Not because I couldn't find the formula. That was frustrating as all get out. I needed the formula because I was making decisions about my career and I wanted to make sure I made the right ones. I didn't want to be stuck as a VP doing program management and never get to CEO. That's like the arrogance of somebody who's 20, which I didn't really notice that age was a barrier. So what did I realize with those CEO interviews? Oh, the news is rather unfortunate. There is no perfect formula. Talk about frustrating. I was in a hurry. I wanted to know what my next move was. I was fascinated with business. I had to get in those rooms. Would nobody let me in? If they had just let me be a fly on the wall, I don't know if I ever would have gone down the same path. So I'm grateful for that. It's hard to be grateful for getting a no when you're so excited about something. But that was the start. That was the start to me creating my own stage. I was searching for patterns and didn't necessarily discover it then, but I discovered it later, which is pretty cool. It just took me a little longer than I wanted to get there. And these patterns led me to creating a formula. a formula that's customizable for each person, that's simple. There's only 3 pieces to it. But it took me a long time to create that formula and lots of trial and error. More error than I'd like to admit, but I guess that's the beauty of life. I'm supposed to say there's nothing in my life I regret because it built who I am today. Would I like to go back and avoid some of the pain? Absolutely. But it wouldn't have led me to all the things that I know now, to this formula I've created, if I didn't have to go through that. So let me share with you the top lessons I learned. So it all started with being later in my entrepreneurial career. So we're fast forward to that. And I started my first business when I was 25 years old. And then my second business was more than a decade later. And then my third, and everything kind of followed from there. When I was in between, when I wasn't quite sure about that second business, I tested out a lot of different ideas. I was looking for a rapid way, almost like rapid prototyping, but I wasn't building a widget. I was designing a business. And I was trying to find not only a faster path than what I had done it before, but a better path. Because truly, I wasn't really happy in that first business. It started out okay, but I didn't understand at that time that I was supposed to enjoy my life while I built my business. And so everything became about my business. I was obsessed, but not in a good way. There is an obsession over the work that you do because you absolutely love it. You are meant to be doing it. And then there's obsession over growth for growth's sake. And that can lead you into some pretty dark places and questionable decisions, including questionable decisions that go against your values and what you hold important and dear. So I would say that if you're building your business, whether it's your first business or your fifth business, you've got to make sure you're in, I hate to use the word balance. I would say instead of balance, it's more about being intentional with how you're going about building that business. Not only the decisions you're making in the business, but in the frame of the bigger picture. What life are you trying to build? What is your business trying to create for you in your life? I call that your life in business. It's really about paying attention to how you're going through living your life while building a company, while making the decisions you're making, and all the other activities going on. Because you have your vision, your trajectory of where you're taking your whole entire, I would say life, but it's not just career. It is life, but I think it doesn't feel concrete enough when I say where you're taking your life. So what kind of life are you trying to build? That should be the pinnacle. That is that ultimate goal. And then underneath that fits the goals of your business and the strategy that you take. And then you have the role that you play in that, your leadership role, growing your leadership skills, and the rules that you decide to play by. And I'm really big on rewriting your own rules, not only for success, but also for how you go about everything that you do and revolutionizing your role. And then you get into optimizing the operations of your business, the opportunities that you go after, and finally, bringing mindset, worthiness, happiness, joy, how you handle setbacks, building up that resilience that overlays everything that you do. And that is the overview of the model that I follow. And that perfect little model I was searching for became a flexible model that really guides every single decision. So if you're having trouble making decisions in your business because one path and another path look pretty much the same ROI-wise, the return that you're going to make, the amount of risk that you're going to take looks pretty even, and the outcomes are so similar that you can't make a decision, there's something missing. That's a tell. And you can use that as a formula to help you when there's a tiebreaker, a decision to be made. So what is the big lesson? What was it that I was missing? Well, it was huge, actually. It was the meaning, the interest, the inspiration. But I didn't always know that. You see, I started out looking for ideas for my second business. It was later on in my entrepreneurial career, and I decided that I would use a visual business model to run rapidly through a bunch of different ideas. And I was searching the internet for a visual business model because I didn't want to create a 300-page business plan for every single idea that I had because I wanted to quickly iterate through all of the ideas. So I found this tool called the Business Model Canvas. Now, the Business Model Canvas is fabulous. It's a one-page placemat style grid that you can plug different ideas into. And it forms a very traditional type of business model where you have your revenue and your key suppliers and the product you're going to make. How are you going to distribute it? What are your clients going to love about it? All the different factors, including revenue. So I used this visual business plan to iterate. And I probably made like 200 different iterations of this plan using this placemat. And I thought, one of these is bound to be a good idea, but I found myself unable to decide, unable to find the one that really, truly fit. That's the inspiration I was looking for. It was missing. I wanted my next goal to be inspiring, to motivate me into action, to give me a goal to shoot for. And the more I looked around in my space at the role models that existed, at the jobs that existed, at the size my company could become to give me those opportunities, I just wasn't interested. The more I realized it wasn't the path I wanted to be on. Now, at first, I thought, I don't want to be a CEO of a big company like Yahoo, which is true. One of the role models I was looking at was a female CEO in big tech. And I had a tech company. So it's natural that that would be the evolution of my career. My tech company, my first one was relatively small. We were making several 8 figures a year in revenue with profit, but they, were this billion-dollar company. So it is a natural trajectory, but it really wasn't for me. And I looked everywhere I could for inspiration. In every situation I was in, I was looking for that gap, the gap in the market that I could solve, which is part of the lean startup idea or the customer-driven design ideas that I love. I do lean startup for one of my customers where I go in and I help them understand the concept of figuring out what the needs of your customer are before you design a product. And that's huge in the tech space because in the tech space, as tech geeks, we like to create a product first. We have a great idea. We know it would be valuable. We just go and create it, sink a bunch of money into it without really testing that idea first. That's the opposite of what Lean Startup is teaching. And the Business Model Canvas is part of that system. It was developed in response to needing to visualize what are our plans going forward. What I really was searching for in my first business that I never quite found was the story. I wanted to differentiate my company so that I could be a sought-after resource. I didn't want to work so hard to get on every team, knock on doors. I wanted people to knock on my door or to remember the conversation that we had, especially when the next need for a team comes around. I used to go after really large proposals, and those are won with a myriad of businesses working together to deliver that work, to deliver that solution. And I wanted to be on the next big team or the next small team. And I wanted a preferred position on that team, not just one of the everybody else's, but guaranteed work share, a specific skill set that I was known for that I could come in and do and dominate. I wanted to be that resource, that supplier to the large primes. And I was a prime as well. So I wanted to be able to attract more customers to realize that I had a service that stood out among the 3,000 other small businesses in my industry. So that story was vastly important to me to be able to have a story to tell people and to my company to be able to attract top talent. and to help people understand when they needed to come to us for a solution. That meaning was going to drive that story. I wanted to know what made my company different, what made us stand out. The meaning behind my business was also going to help me be creative in my vision and to be able to put together a strategy for growth that wasn't just more of the same. Just hire more people, just get more contracts. There's that saying, what is it? What got you here won't get you there, was very, very true. And I was out of ideas for how to inspire myself and how to inspire my employees. That's a huge deal when you feel like you have to hype yourself up before every single all-hands meeting just to hope that you're motivating enough so that your people will help you grow, that they'll be excited about what you're building and that they'll want to stay with you. And all of that is so much easier with a story. I just knew it. And that story was the meaning of my business, why we were in business, why we were the one you should choose, why we were different. And it was missing. And it was missing from the ideas that I was putting together for my second business. So I had no way of differentiating which of my ideas was the one that I should go for. And they all had fantastic ROI opportunity. Is anything ever guaranteed? No, I didn't expect my idea to be guaranteed, but I certainly wanted it to be better than what I had done before because I had never reached, the highest pinnacle of my goals yet. Even though I'd reached all the goals on my bucket list, I kept adding to the accomplishments that I wanted to seek. And I wanted to reach independence in my wealth. I wanted to be able to live off the dividends that my investments made for me. I wanted that freedom. So I had a lot more runway. I just didn't know what plane I was flying. So one of the biggest lessons I learned when I was searching for this perfect formula was that it had to include inspiration and meaning. And I had to be really interested in it because anyone who's built a business to 7 figures, 8 figures, and beyond knows that it is a lot of work. You may grow and grind it out in the beginning, and eventually you make a pretty good living for yourself. And you wonder, do I really need to press harder? But when you're ambitious, when you're driven, when there's something else you want to accomplish, you're going to be driving even harder. But maybe it doesn't have to be that way. And maybe the way you're doing it now isn't necessarily the way you want to do it. Not that you can't do the same things to grow. Sometimes you can't, especially if you're trying to jump from one plateau to another and take your business to the next level. Things have to change, and sometimes they have to change dramatically to get there. And that leads into the second biggest lesson that I had to learn, which is there's more than one way to do it. So we all on the surface know there's more than one way to do anything. But when you're trying to grow a business and you've never done it before, you look around at those that have gone before you. And it makes sense. We want to learn from lessons. We want to do best practices because it gives us that shortcut. It gives us a proven path to follow, so we hope that we have less failure. But what it can also do is be a trap into removing our creativity and our critical thinking because we're so bent on being successful, getting it right, taking the shortcut, doing all the steps. I'm not saying we're skipping steps here by shortcut, but getting there faster and not falling into some of the pitfalls. And there's certainly help. There's room for that. There's a place for that. But when you're at a point where you're designing the vision of your business and you're really trying to decide how you're going to strategically maneuver and to be different and to differentiate yourself, you can't fall into the trap of just copying what everyone else around you is doing because that leads to mediocre results. And who wants mediocre results? I mean, sure, if you're staying on the same plateau you're on now, but if you're looking to jump, if you're looking to take your company to the next level, that's not going to cut it. You've got to be creative. And when you're not inspired and you're not really interested in the 200 business ideas you've gone through, it can be really tough. And if you're searching for that perfect formula, because you want to get it right, because you're used to following a formula and the evidence is you're very successful doing that, it can be really hard to go out on your own, to try things, to risk, to stumble, to fall. But when you can embrace that there's more than one way to do it, you can start to listen to your own gut that tells you, I don't think I want to do that. That strategy sounds great, but it doesn't feel right. And tapping into that feeling is key. It's also hard to do if you're not practiced at doing it. And I found that the more I was desperate to find the right idea, to grow, even after I started my second business and well into my third, I'm like, I want to get this right. I've come too far to fall, but that's what we have to do. We have to be willing to fall and trust that we can be successful because we've been successful in the past doing something we had no idea what we were doing. You have to trust that you can bring that same ingenuity, that same capability to the table and be successful this time too. And do it differently. Do it your way. Do it the right way. And the right way is the decision that you make every single day. It's as simple as that. It doesn't feel simple, but it is. Because you get to make a new decision every single day. So instead of thinking of your decisions as taking the plunge into this 10-year-long experiment, hoping to get to the end in 5 years instead of 10 and make it big and finally do something else that you really love, back that bus up and take every single day as a decision, a new opportunity to decide. And that's how I think differently about failure. Instead of thinking about failure, I think about micro adjustments that I can make when I don't really like the way things are going. And that also releases you from the dependence on the outcome. Instead of thinking of, I will change when I don't like the outcome or the result, back that up too and say, no. I can just change when I don't have a result yet. Because every single day, every single moment, I get to decide if this is working or not. Now, am I saying that you go and do a 3-year program or R&D program, and then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you ditch it all? No. Hopefully, you'll understand before that 3-year mark that something's not quite right. And on those days when you just got to pivot, you got to kill something and go to the next thing, I hope that you're brave enough to make those decisions, to at least look at the opportunity or the options or the choices that you do have. So that hard lesson is all about understanding that there is more than one path, there is more than one way, and being brave enough to listen to someone's strategy, someone's tactics, try them on and say, yeah, I don't want to do it that way. It may be successful, it may be a proven technique, but it's not right for me. I either have to find a different one or make something up. And then trying it. That bravery comes when you try it. So I learned another lesson as well. And this is a lesson that I can teach you how to do, which is really exciting. The question becomes, how do you find the formula? I mentioned earlier on that I have a formula and I follow it, and I invite you to follow it as well. And this is the point where I want to teach you what it is. And it's not a perfect formula because I don't expect you to follow exactly in my footsteps, all the things that I did, that path that I was looking for early in my days when I was interviewing those CEOs, right? Instead, this formula gives you a model that you can use. So enough teasing. I call it the impact formula. And there are 3 M's of the impact formula to help you create a vision that not only inspires you, but inspires top talent to help you grow and to define the differentiation so that you can become a sought-after solution provider, which is like the pinnacle of what I was searching for. So why do you want to inspire top talent? Well, as you grow from solopreneur to entrepreneur, where you have a few successful technicians and experts on your team, into CEO, where you start to hire your C-level suite and your your leaders, your directors, people that think more strategically about their divisions. That's kind of that trajectory that you can go on. A lot of times you're hiring people at different points in your business, and they may or may not be qualified to grow with you. Sometimes you need different people to join the team. And I was always looking for people that could be responsible for their own work, that could be self-motivated, and that really understood where I was going to take the company so that they could join me. Now, that last part wasn't always the case because I didn't have a reason that my company existed. My company existed to make money for me. My company existed because I knew that in my salaried position, I was capped, and I didn't want that cap. I wanted to decide what work I did, how much money I earned, the benefits that I wanted to offer, not only for myself, but my employees. I wanted that autonomy and that choice and that decision-making. So I got that by starting my own business, but that wasn't necessarily what was going to inspire my employees to want to go, what I considered at the time, above and beyond to help my company grow. Why should we? I got that question all the time. Why should we do this extra thing? Why should we help grow? That's your job. Your job is to find contracts for us, and our job is to work them, to do the client delivery. But I also had my staff, my office staff, who weren't focused on the client. They were focused on running the business with me. They weren't looking at growing my business either. And I think it's because it felt like my business, which makes sense. But I needed help. I needed help not only for people to do their job, but to help me grow. And there were several things that I did that didn't allow that to happen very well. First, not making it an explicit part of their role, and then not guiding them on what exactly that meant to them, because they're not going to have the same skin in the game as the owner of the business, as me. So inspiring top talent through the story that you create, which is that meaning that underscores your entire business, is key to helping bring in the people that see your vision, that feel it too, that have the same values and the same interest and the same aspiring goals as you do, and their expertise is in a place where you need help. I mean, that's that magic that you can bring in when you have a way to discuss it with people, to tell people about it. So what is differentiation? And why do you need that? Well, I mentioned that if you define your differentiation, you become a sought-after solution provider. That just means that instead of you making all the cold calls, people are calling you, they're picking up the phone, they're coming to you. And that might seem like a far-off dream and utopia, but it's actually possible when you have the right messaging, when your message isn't muddy, when it's clear, and when it means something to other people, when it has that bigger than you life to it. It also sets you apart from the competition. As I mentioned, there were 3,000 other small businesses in my tiny little market niche. That's a lot of competition. So we want to be the company that stands out. And an easy way to do that is to be rememberable and referable. And an easy way to do that is to create a story about your business that other people can remember. So I'll tell you a little story about business development in the federal contracting world. My first two businesses were federal contracting, where we delivered technology and solutions, both software and hardware, to the federal government. And they procured that through these large contract vehicles. So we had some prime vehicles and some subcontract vehicles where another person was the direct bidder to the federal, and I was a supplier to that large business. So that is the subcontracting, kind of like a teammate. Well, we called ourselves teammates, so technically we were a teammate. Anyway, they would see for any bid, any one program they were bidding on, which is one contract with the government, they would probably interview 100 or 150 companies to come in and be part of their team. Now, some bids, they would have a team of 10. Some bids would have a team of 83. I remember I was putting together a team for a $10 billion deal. That's billion with a B. And I had 83 teammates for that bid, and it was a 10-year bid. So when you think about the number of companies that the person putting that capture together, and the capture is simply going out to capture the work, to put the proposal together, that's a lot of meetings, and that's a lot of companies, and they all start to run together. So not only that, but as you're putting a bid together, you have slots, like little buckets. And each slot is a type of work or type of delivery. So let's say you're building a car. There would be a bucket or a slot for tires, and a bucket for glass, and a bucket for machining the parts, and a bucket for assembly of the car. So you can start to get the idea of how different pieces might be pieced out. And some companies have an expertise. So let's say I have an expertise in programming the internal computer system of the car. Well, there might be 10 companies they interview, and each company fits neatly into one of the slots. That's pretty easy to remember. Who is that computer one again? But let's say there's 15 companies that do the computer design or the computer programming of the car. Well, then you've got to remember all 15 of those, in addition to the 15 tire makers and the 15 machinists and the 15 companies you interview about glass. And it starts to all run together. So you tend to put teams together of people you've worked with before. But if you're like me and you're breaking into a new market or trying to build a relationship with a new set of companies, you want to stand out. You want to be the one they pick. They might pick 2 in the computer programming space to be a sub. So you have to stand out. Now, I used to be that person putting the teams together. And I remember getting capabilities briefings and one sheets on the different companies that would come in and talk to me about my team and try to win a spot on my team. And I had a drawer in my desk. And after each of those meetings, I would write a couple notes on their sheet or a couple notes on their packet, and I would put it in my drawer. And then my drawer was so full that I had to move to a second drawer. How often do you think I went through that drawer looking for a company? And how organized do you think I was in that drawer? And I'm a pretty organized person. Yet sometimes it was hard to categorize my companies, the subs, into each of those buckets because they weren't as clear as tires versus glass versus computer. It was varying degrees of computer things. So they all start to mush together. So the importance of differentiation, creating a story, is to be remembered. The companies that I called to join my team were the ones I remembered. And I remembered the story of the business, their why, much more than I remembered the faces or the names, because the companies all start to run together. So that is the power of being different, of having a way to talk about your company. So how do you create your own impact formula? So first, what does an impact formula even look like? So think of a bullseye with 3 rings. Label the innermost ring, meaning, the middle ring, motivation, and the outer ring, movement. The first step is getting really clear, crystal clear on the start of your journey, which is defined by the destination you're trying to reach. And this forms what I call the beacon of impact, because it's that shining light that shows you which way to move. Remember how I said there was this tiebreaker that I needed in my path forward? Do I go left or right? Which of these ideas that both have equal ROI potential, which one is the right one? And you need to really listen to your gut. How do you feel? And if that inspiration is missing, you might need to come up with a new option. Having this destination defined and allowing that to drive your decisions forward is a practical way to decide which way to move forward when you're trying something new. This is geared for those moments in your life where you're at a crossroads and you're ready for something more, something bigger. But the path seems daunting because you can feel where you want to end up, but the end point is so fuzzy. You know generally what needs to be done, but exactly how you're going to get there is unknown. It's so different. So allow the reason that you're seeking this next big change to be personally motivating. Now, it may seem counterintuitive, especially if your idea hinges on serving more people or making a bigger impact in more people's lives or simply making a bigger impact. And the personal motivation can't be money. To the happiness money will bring to your life. And it can't be material things that you can surround yourself with because you have money. These are certainly additional ideas to fill in your vision, but it can't be the main motivator, that main seed, that genesis of the idea. Because if that were true, I wouldn't have had to have 200 different ideas floating around in the ether with me hoping I would pick something. So pro tip, even if you don't have your next big idea yet, particularly if you're trying to create that vision or to find a gap in the market you want to solve, or just hone in on what it is at the end of your fingertips, that vision that's so fuzzy you're not quite sure what it is, this applies to finding that spark, that genesis of your idea. And that's my superpower. It's helping people find the genesis of their next big idea, turning that into the vision that propels their business forward, and then connecting the dots from where you are now to how to build that roadmap so you actually like the company you build. And you get to enjoy the process along the way, instead of hoping you might get lucky, make it big, and retire before you get to enjoy your life. Nope, we are not about sacrificing your happiness around here. Been there, done that, don't recommend it. And it starts with a new way of thinking. And I'd love to share this with you now. The answer to your next big dream goal isn't searching your environment everywhere you go to find a gap in the market. And the answer isn't as simple as deciding to 10x your business, the business that you already have. Not if you want to create resilience for lasting change and avoid getting to the end only to look around and hate where you've ended up and be full of regrets. And be having to go all the way back, unwind everything you did, all the money you spent, all the time you spent, and not only have to get to the end goal that you wanted all along, but play catch up. I'd rather you make those right decisions from the beginning, from now, from the point you are right now. And while your decision can be to go bigger, whatever bigger may look like for you, it isn't often enough to carry you through the finish line with your sanity, your relationships, and your happiest self intact. The root of the change, if you want to make it through the long haul with the stamina you need, is to get to the end without looking around, hating where you ended up. It must come from within. The inspiration comes from within. And money, though important, can't be the driver to your decisions. It isn't enough, no matter how central a theme it feels. On a similar note, the idea of having a bigger impact in the lives of the people you help, that isn't enough either, because it can become this nebulous idea. And when you have this open-ended thought topic, it can be really difficult to be creative and to pinpoint a way forward. Because neither of those, the money or the idea of having a bigger impact, neither of them go deep enough to sustain you when you want to give up, when you hit an obstacle. You might have muscled through to get to this point in your business, but are you doing it at the expense of your adrenal system or your health or sacrificing your happiness? Are you sacrificing time with your family, truly connecting with the enjoyment of your time with them while you're doing a favorite activity? I mean, that is really the test. I remember that I would say to myself, actually say it out loud to myself, it's okay. I'm only going to sacrifice my happiness in the short term, just for this one thing. I got to get through this thing. And then I woke up one day and looked around and I realized that that sacrifice was normal. It was my new normal. Who wants that? There's so much more to life than just the money. So it can be important and not the driver. And that is that meaning that comes from within, that comes from an interest that you have, a change that you want to make. And then you allow the motivation, that's ring 2, the motivation for your next chapter to be rooted in that change that you seek to make in your own life. And allow that change to be a feeling, a quality improvement. Remember, I don't mean an improvement in your material surroundings or luxurious vacations. These will be used to fill in the vision, but only after you have the seed. I'm talking about an improvement in how you're feeling. My pursuit of work that makes me happy and still makes serious money took me a long time because I didn't believe that those two things went together. I was taught that work is work and fun is fun. And if work were meant to be fun, it wouldn't be called work. I also have vivid memories of coming to different people that I considered wise in my life with ideas on either the work I wanted to do, the jobs I wanted to hold, the ideas I wanted to pursue, the businesses I wanted to pursue. And constantly I was cautioned. I was cautioned because they didn't believe that those ideas, which felt so energizing and interesting to me, they made me so happy. Those other people didn't feel like those things could make any money. They told me I would be poor, that those things were supposed to be hobbies. I believed them. I didn't understand that they just didn't have evidence in their life, and it looked scary, and they were trying to keep me safe, but all the while making me extremely unhappy. While using your own personal quality of life improvement may feel disconnected from the business you want to start, or even selfish, especially if you're used to compartmentalizing your personal life from your professional life and goals, like I used to do. And quite frankly, I was raised and learned from my surrounding circle of influence to do that as well. But when you can truly connect to how you want to feel and creating that change in your own life, it helps you become a decision maker with unshakable confidence. You can use that as the problem you want to solve and a driving force that sparks new ideas. It wakes up your creativity and enjoyment. Your fulfillment comes to life because you are solving a problem that, because it's rooted in your personal why, can serve as an endless source of ideas, resilience, and decision-making power. When you root the meaning behind why your business exists in a change that you want to make personally, you let that bloom into what the change can do for those near and dear to you, which serves as that second ring of motivation, another source of resilience, and well, as the name suggests, motivation. Then you allow that change, the change that you wish to seek, to blossom out even further from those near and dear into a change you want to make on the world. And the beauty of the word world is you get to define how big it is. So if the globe feels overwhelming or impossible to you, start smaller. And that change becomes a movement that people can rally behind. They want to help you make that change, a change that they can see themselves, that they can align with. And that forms the third ring, the movement and the meaningful story that will inspire countless people to join you in growing your business and to buy from you as a sought-after resource. Because your wish, that small seed of what you wanted to change in your own life, and seeing how you changing your life can affect those near and dear to you, how much better a person you can be in their world, and then how you can take that change and give it to other people, that is the impact. And when you can harness that power that you possess within, that drive that only a personally driven change can give you, that's when you make a real mark on the world through the business that you're trying to create. And that, my friend, that is how you begin to create your own formula for success. Then it's simply a matter of the baby steps that you'll take to create your own path.